Welcome back. Thank you very much for staying with us. The Eastern Cape Department of Transport says it can no longer afford the scholar transport service in its current form and is revising its policy, which might exclude more learners. This was revealed in its court papers before the Eastern Cape High Court in Makhanda. Joining us to discuss the department's position to review scholar transport policy is the South African Human Rights Commission's Eastern Cape head, Dr. Eileen Carter. Good evening, Doctor. Thank you very much for joining us on the program. Now, that decision by the department to urgently review the scholar transport will most certainly see more scholars excluded. Where does the Human Rights Commission stand on this?
Evening to your viewers. Well, the Human Rights Commission was very clear from right at the start that the scholar transport issue is a systemic concern. That's also the reason why we joined as an amicus, basically a friend of the court, to set our position out, because ours is to say that no child should be prevented from accessing education as they have the right in terms of Section 29 of the Constitution, but more so that this right comes without qualifications and is immediately enforceable. So the Commission joined this proceeding because it is very concerned about the continuous lack of urgency in realizing this right for the children on the ground.
But then what do you make now of government saying that for them at this point, it's practically unsustainable?
Well, that is what government knew already in 2012. The first file that we could trace in our respect, and the report that we drafted in 2014 already, we made recommendations to the departments to say that you need to review policy, you need to set in place measures so that those children most in need can access education and can access scholar transport. Now, in 2024, 10 years after this initial report from the Human Rights Commission, to say that we now are still reviewing policies when one can foresee the issue on the ground. We would ask a few questions around that, particularly, and again, I'm going to reflect to Section 29 as well as 28 of the Constitution, that the rights of children are immediately enforceable and should be so.
So granted, many NGOs as well believe that this would be a violation of the children's rights to education, but in what we're seeing, they've indicated that they could have a shortfall of 449. So what could be done at this point? Is this the time when perhaps they need to get the intervention or seek the intervention of national government?
So I think the respondents were also very clear in their papers and their submission to say that the court must be very wary of the separation of powers doctrine. So the court cannot necessarily tell the department, you need to allocate X, Y, Z towards this program. But what the court can do, and what the applicants then have asked from the court, is a supervisory order for the court then to have almost an oversight of this program and the urgency of this new policy to be implemented, because we have to make sure that the parameters that we set in place is going to serve to the most vulnerable communities' interests. So what we must always remember, Mfudo, is that children's rights are immediately enforceable, not by chance, but by design. We have a very limited window in which we can realize these rights of them. Otherwise, they're going to be developmentally probably affected for the rest of their lives.
Now, beyond the legalese, as the Human Rights Commission, you have actually had some of your officials that would have followed some of these young people as they made that long walk to school, some of them. Just paint us a picture of what exactly they have to contend with on a daily just to access education.
The policy as it stands says that learners will be provided with scholar transport or can qualify for scholar transport if they live farther than 5 kilometers from school. So a child who lives, let's say, 4.8 kilometers from school and has to make a return travel of 9.9 kilometers every day just to access basic education. This contributes to systemic inequality for our kids. And what we did in March, and what we tried to illustrate in solidarity of these kids, is we undertook these journeys. We went to Mbizane, we walked with the kids who were without scholar transport to bring awareness to this consistent issue. And after that, and as we also promised as the Human Rights Commission, and we were led by our Commissioner, Professor Madlingozi, is we promised that we're not going to leave it there. On the same day, we went to see the Speaker to address this issue. And a few months later, we're in the High Court.
Doctor, thank you very much for your time this evening. And quite important that beyond tracking with the children, where you walked with them, you stated that it was not just going to be superficial, you took it further. You went and made sure that you are part of the court matter that's sitting as amicus curiae. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. That was Eastern Cape, South African Human Rights Commission Manager, Dr. Eileen Carter.